Namaste. Hi, everybody. Happy Samhain, Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Souls Day, All Saints Day, and happy Taurus full moon on October 31st. We are the Shaman and the Mermaid. I didn't say that at first, but there's things going on. I'm Michael.
I'm Katrina.
And astrologers say this all the time, but this is a big one.
Yeah, there's some pivot points that will come through in the next 2 weeks that can make some big differences, I think, going forward. But let's start with the full moon, since that has a lot going on right out of the chute.
Okay, well, the full moon is Saturday, October 31st, and it will be a full moon in Taurus. The moon will be hanging out with black moon Lilith and Uranus. So moon, black moon, Lilith, Uranus, and then here's the sun over here. Sun is illuminating all of them, shining on that trio. And what a perfect trio, because that is also All Hallows Eve, the midpoint between fall and winter. And in the Gaelic tradition, they call it Samhain. The word's right there. It's written differently than it sounds in English. What to say about this one? Did you want to cheap in about that?
Well, Halloween is a more common way that we think of All Hallows Eve. It's tends to have that spooky feel to it, just in general. Everyone puts their little ghosts and goblins out for decorations and our skeletons, and it has kind of that darkness to it, or accentuates part of our fears. It's trying to call up a little bit of those fears. That's not the original intent of it, but that's what it's kind of morphed into throughout the centuries of its practice. And so we've chosen a theme that we want to tap into that goes along with the Halloween energy, the veil being thin. As Michael said, this is the midpoint between fall and winter, and it's traditionally the point of the year where the veil lifts between the two worlds, and those ghosts and goblins, or the spirit world as we like to refer to them as, the ancestors, can come through with a little more ease than with other times of the year. Another time where the veil is thin is around Passover and Easter. That's the midpoint, basically between winter and spring. I'm losing my days.
Also Beltane, right?
And yeah, that's Beltane in the Gaelic tradition as well. And so, always we can access our ancestors, always we can connect to that spiritual plane, but this is just a thinner veil, as I said, to make that a little bit more available to us. The access is a little easier. But that can be daunting to us, and so, hence the play and all the ghosts and the goblins and the scary things. But our theme today and for the next 2 weeks is don't be afraid of the dark. And that sounds like it's focused mostly on the Halloween aspect or the thin veil, but also we want to use that theme to relate to the current energy of the times. We have a lot of fear going around right now, not just about ghosts and goblins and ancestors coming through, but we have the pandemic upon us. We have an incredibly important election coming up on November 3rd, the day that Mercury goes direct.
Yep.
And we have just a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty breeds fear, and it seems right now a little daunting, and there's a lot of uncertainty around what's truth and what's false, and who's saying the right things, and who do we believe, and we're looking on these outside sources for what the truth is, and so it just seems like a big void of darkness and uncertainty and fear. So the theme of don't be afraid of the dark goes not only to this particular full moon on Hallows Eve, but for this whole time right now that we're in, that unfortunately I wish we could say is going to end, you know, at the election or at the new year, you know, starting 2021, everything's going to go light. It's not the case. There's, you know, everything rises and falls in waves, crests and troughs, but it's not that, you know, exact on a dime that something shifts. And I would say that hang in there for sure. We'll crest again, we'll rise again, but it's not just coming up because it's 2021 around the corner or because the election is ending. Well, we'll see if it ends. We'll see if we find out who our president is on November 3rd. I have a sneaking suspicion that that result won't be right away. Anyway, the theme, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, has a little bit of a continuation to it. That's the main juice of it. Don't be afraid of the dark. Just hold to your steady heart and believe that you've got the strength and the power to navigate with your eyes closed of what's going on. You just have to trust a little bit more. So essentially trust. But the continuation is a quote from The Little Prince, for those of you who ever had to read that, or I shouldn't say had to read it. I think it's a great fortune if you did read it. It's a wonderful story. But if you're familiar with it, this will be a familiar quote to you. It's one of the most popular from that book. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is invisible. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So that Don't Be Afraid of the Dark piece is saying that tune into the heart, because you don't need to see everything right now for it to be valid or for it to be truth, because what is essential is invisible to the eye. And that kind of ties into the veil so thin right now and the world's merging between the spirit realm and this physical realm that we're existing in. You know, another way you can think of that is that we're in this 3D dimension, 3D consciousness, and you know, we can be upgrading to another level of consciousness, evolving our consciousness to more of a 5D consciousness. And this is a chance for us to, you know, explore that a little bit by letting ourselves trust from the heart. So long explanation for a little theme of don't be afraid of the dark, but we'll keep tapping into that as we motor through all the aspects for the next 2 weeks. That takes us to the new moon. So we did one thing, though I'm not done. I want to mention, he said that the moon and Uranus and Lilith are all together, black moon Lilith. Lilith is a little lesser known to a lot of people. Many of you are probably learning about this particular invisible body. It's not something that we see in the night sky. It's a force that holds the moon in its centrifugal force, and it's invisible to the eye. But black moon Lilith is a representation of our dark feminine, is most condensed way I could put it, I think. And again, the word dark doesn't need to be negative. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation. Dark is just lesser known, lesser explored, a little bit more in the recesses of our being. And this dark feminine is begging to emerge. It's been in the dark or unseen for too long, and it is an antidote to this highly overt masculine energy that's been dominating for so long. So the opportunity for this full moon, which has the sun opposite, illuminating the black moon Lilith, Uranus and moon, is a great chance for us to do some exploration of our own black moon Lilith or our own dark feminine energy. And maybe just think about, what does that mean to you? Sit in the darkness with that. You know, the darkness is when we close our eyes. So that's a lot of a meditative place, similar to a meditative place. Sit in meditation and don't be afraid of what comes up when you're in that quiet place. And meditate on Black Moon Lilith and see what that brings to you and what your intuitive self reveals to you about that. But it's time for her to emerge. And this is maybe a big calling out for her. And don't forget about Uranus. That's the other piece I wanted to mention. Uranus is that wild card, and he is all about evolution and revolution. And he'll come in a minute and he'll leave in a minute, and he doesn't care what he leaves in his wake as long as it's shaking things up for all of us to dive into for the betterment of the whole. And so sometimes it can seem like, wow, that was hard, that was hurtful, and somebody else will receive the same lightning bolt from Uncle Uranus, and it'll feel like a jolt to the system that gets them motivated and inspired. But it's active right now. Uranus is active in the sign of Taurus, its home sign with the moon and Lilith. So that's all on Hallows Eve, right there. I know, a lot. I spoke a lot. I'm gonna
Anything else on the full moon? Okay. Well, the day after the full moon on November 2nd is Mercury square Saturn and Venus opposite Chiron. It's also Day of the Dead. So that same energy that Katrina's talking about isn't just one day. It's really a span of time, most intensely October 31st, the 1st and 2nd, but it's heading both ways, about a week in each direction. Mercury square Saturn, this is the second of 3 squares that Mercury will put to Saturn. As one of our astrologer friend likes to call it, Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter up there in Capricorn is the boardroom for the soul's evolution of 2020, and the board is demanding results, and Mercury is the one that brings in information, communication. Mercury also has a lot to do with the sign of Scorpio. If you ever heard of the term psychopomp, Mercury is a psychopomp, which means it's one who can travel in and out of the hell realms, the underworld, the death realms, and psychopomps are people that help souls transition between the worlds, whether they're birthing or dying. And so Mercury is going between the realms and is being held accountable by Saturn. Saturn says, I want the truth. I'm going to slow you down and delay you until you give it to me. And I demand that we pull up anything that's been hidden in the dark. This is on the coattails of that Lilith, Uranus energy. Lilith can often bring things out of the shadows, as Katrina said, not to be bad, but to help heal it and then return it to the light. Simultaneously, Venus is opposite Chiron. By the way, Mercury and Venus are both in Libra. We put that in the last report. And Chiron is in the sign of Aries. And so Venus opposite Chiron is, how you feel about oneself, your values, survival, opposite of feeling your wounds, things from the past that may have not worked out. And so this could be a day of challenge, but it could also be a day, if you're working with the energy, if you're doing that meditation like Katrina suggested the day before, if you're talking to the ancestors, if you're trying to keep that quote from The Little Prince, and don't be afraid of the dark, this could be working through things in a harmonious way. That's what I would say about that. That is our Day of the Dead, November 1st.
And I think Venus opposite Chiron is very similar to Sun opposite Black Moon Lilith in a sense, because it's allowing for you to, Venus is our values and our love and our sense of self, self-worth, self-respect. And Chiron is the wound, and it's allowing us to really take a look at who we are and what we need to heal. And Sun opposite Lilith is a similar situation. The Sun is our outward expression of self. Lilith is that dark feminine. It's giving a chance to, in a safe place, you're in opposition, so you're opposite side of the table. There's some space between. There's nothing coming from behind or the sides. It's directly across. You're in a safe place to look at this shadow energy of maybe the wound that has some festering, or that dark feminine that is wanting to emerge. I can't express that enough, that our dark feminine is so wanting to emerge. And just a reminder, when we talk about the feminine and the masculine, that we're not talking about man and woman. We're talking about energetics. We're not talking about gender. So everybody has this dark feminine, and everybody has the masculine as well. And we all have certain amounts of it being healed and strong and ready to roll, and all of us have different amounts that need to still be nurtured and taken care of and brought to the surface. So maybe you've been doing your work on the dark feminine, or learning how to nurture your masculine energy so that it's being used in right way. That's a whole other topic. A lot to do with Mars direct, I think, which we'll talk about here shortly. But just have awareness that it's a good time to do that work and not to be afraid of the dark. And again, it's only with the heart one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So we sit in our heart space to really try to understand all this that we're speaking of. All right, then we keep on going. We got a big one on November 3rd, besides the election. And please vote, please vote, please vote. I put my public service announcement in there. What's the astrology on that day?
Mercury goes direct after 3.5 weeks retrograde. And while Mercury will go direct that day, it's not always expected that the energy totally shifts into a forward-moving direction. Sometimes people think, okay, the truth's going to come out, we'll know things, transportation's going to move all right, there'll be clarity. That's possible. It is a major shift in energy. However, Mercury's in its shadow for another almost 3 weeks until November 19th. And the shadow means it has to go back through the same tracks that it retrograded on. And so it's still moving through areas where there needs to be some clarity. So if you want to apply that to the election, we're not necessarily making predictions, but the likelihood of clarity coming on November 3rd, at least from our perspective, is low.
So its shadow goes through like the 19th, is that right? And that shadow will be through Scorpio predominantly, am I correct? So Mercury going through Scorpio, as Michael said, you know, that psychopomp of being able to go into the underworld. And direct is good, but direct is faster. And, you know, we can really pull up some of the drudge. I always like to find the upshot to that. Like, we can really get in there and find out what's going on, maybe all the way through to that 19th.
3 days after that, on November 6th, Friday, Mercury squares Saturn again for the third time. Saturn can often represent, you know, when we're applying it to society, delays in situations. Saturn's job is to put the brakes on things to make sure it's aligning with the karma or the dharma, the bigger dharma. And so oftentimes it'll say stop, wait, go back, fix it, redo it. No, you can't go forward. Tell me more. I need more information. And so squaring Mercury, as Katrina said, this can be good though. Saturn square Mercury is not a bad aspect necessarily, but it's saying, you know, slow down, make sure things are right, do it right. Do it right. You've had 3 chances. This is the third square to Saturn, so it's saying make sure what you're thinking. Make sure your facts are in alignment. Make sure what you're teaching others is true. Make sure that what you're putting out there in the network of the interweb is in alignment. This is your third try at it.
And remember the second one, the last report had the first one. And then November 1st was the second square, and then November 6th is the third square. So pretty rapidly, boom, boom, right? One after the other, these are squaring, and I'm glad for it. It's like the built-in fact checker, and we need that right now because there is so much that's unclear and uncertain. So even though it's a square, don't be too intimidated by it. If you're in your truth, I don't think there's much to worry about. If you're hiding something, then, you know, you're probably going to get called on it. It's probably, with these 3 big squares, things are hard to hide. It's like that quote from Buddha, 3 things can not long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Well, this is kind of one of those situations. It won't stay hidden too much longer, especially that 3rd square. And then we come to a half moon in Leo, so that's halfway through the report. And what do you have on half moon in Leo? I like half moons because they, to me, are not extreme. They're very balanced and centered. And what about Leo?
Well, we're heading towards the new moon, so this is the 3/4 turn of the moon cycle. And so it's kind of a quieting, a little bit of a death cycle, a little bit of a shh. So I see this Leo's energy is often about leadership, about playfulness and creativity. And so there could be like a little quieting in the cycle there where maybe somebody of worthiness steps up and offers some leadership, offers some inspiration, offers some clarity that day. Maybe it's you. Maybe you do it in your own life. You know, we're always sometimes listening to the astrology reports. It's going to be a leader, a person, an external thing. Why not you? Why not we all step up in Leo energy that day and take leadership and take ourselves into the creative state of manifesting things and putting seeds for the future in the ways that we want to see them.
Rawr!
Rar.
He's a Leo rising. Okay, so then we move on to Monday, November 9th, and we have Mars and Venus in an opposition. I think that can always be a little challenging. And then we also have Sun trining Neptune. You want to speak to those guys?
Venus opposite Mars, I think is similar to the Sun opposite Uranus in some ways, and same like Katrina said, Venus opposite Chiron. The Sun and Venus have a lot to do with our heart energy and how we're loving, how we're putting our energy out there, and they have a lot to do with how much we hold self-respect, self-value, self-worth. Mars on this hand has to do with your willpower, what you're going to go for, your seed of initiation and your intentions. And so opposite of this can be a full illumination, like is your intentions and your willpower in alignment with your love and your heart? It's not saying yes or no about it, it's just illuminating it. It's like the flashlight coming across, or at sunrise when the sun meets your heart, you're opposite of the sun. So this is a full illumination of that. Use it wisely. And I think that Sun trine Neptune there is helping you use it wisely. Mm-hmm. That's a really nice aspect. The Sun in Scorpio is about merging and coming together with things with the heart. And Neptune in Pisces over there is about your spiritual acumen, meditating, praying, getting into touch with the ancestors. And it's like this time of year, even though it's the 9th of November, that portal is still open and still available. And so this can support that a lot. Energetically, I think it's a really great time to plant seeds. Mm-hmm. Katrina and I were talking about this time, don't be afraid of the dark. I was saying it's kind of this energy of this report. It's like there's chaos going on and the dark underworld's being turned up, but it's rich and fertile. And behind there's a little farmer, could be you, planting seeds for the next cycle quietly, not making a big to-do about it. And so this is a day where even though it doesn't look like the future is close at hand, you're there planting seeds.
And Venus represents the feminine and Mars represents the masculine, and again, not gender, but energetics. And they're in that opposite sides of each other, which I think is a really comfortable, safe place to work with one another, because there's no hidden doors, there's no hidden angle to it. It's straight up. And that's a good time with the Sun trining Neptune, as Michael suggested, that it has that spiritual acumen to it, to really do some healing of the masculine and feminine, whichever side that you feel is a little bit weak or overbearing or needs nurturing. This would be a good day for that as well. Maybe that's the seed planting you're referring to.
Perhaps.
And then we move along. Mercury is going to go into Scorpio, as we mentioned. It went direct. It was in Libra, and then it's in its shadow train, so it's going back into Scorpio. And then that's when you could kind of think of it as going into the underworld a little bit. And so right after, that's helping to dredge up or dig up some of that dark stuff that we're not going to be afraid of. We just close our eyes and trust. And I often think about some of my best visions are in dream time when I'm meditating. It's not so much, I'm grateful for my vision. I'm grateful to be able to open my eyes and see the beauty of the world. But I also have had, like I said, some of my best images that I can conjure have been in my mind's eye in the darkness. And this is part of what we're saying is critical right now, is using that dark time to let our creative force come to the surface. And I think Mercury in Scorpio has a lot to do with that. Then a big, big day.
Woof.
Yeah. This is one of those days that we've been talking about for 2 years, for 3 years in astrology, because it's such a pivot point. And Michael referred to the board that's been living in Capricorn, the 3 biggies. This is a big connection of these 3 biggies.
Way back on January 12th, we had the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn, and Jupiter was very close by. The conjunction happened a few days or weeks later. Now this is the third and final time that Jupiter and Pluto come together in the sky for the next 13 years. And it is a big energetic point for 2020 and going forward for a whole new cycle, for the Jupiter-Pluto cycle. And when Jupiter and Pluto come together, and this is closing out of a cycle. So this is the darkest, darkest, darkest moon cycle for these 2 planets before they go into a new moon phase. Jupiter has to do with revealing truth and trust and faith and the big teacher. And Pluto is the underworld, the same thing we've been talking about. It's not bad or good, but it's the things that have been hidden. There's so much that have been hidden in our world, like spirituality, the idea that we are beings beyond our time and beings beyond our bodies. There's so much hidden about the feminine, that spirit is everywhere and in the earth, and that Mother Earth can heal herself if we love her. That's been a truth that's been pushed away. Everything has to come from a bottle or a pill or a scientist, and I have nothing against all of those. But that has been raised here, and the other side of the intuitive, spiritual, feminine has been dropped. We need to raise them to equality so that they're equal. It's not one above the other, but right now it's quite unbalanced. And so I think Jupiter coming together with Pluto is big, big truths revealed and big energies. And it's not always like the big truth, like we know this politician did this. It could be the big truth, like we're all spirit beings and something happens to awaken us to that again. And that's a huge shift in consciousness. That's my hope.
Yeah, I feel like that's what you just said, the huge shift in consciousness will be a striking point on that November 12th as those 2 powerhouse planets come together. And it's funny if you think about them in size. Pluto would look like a little speck of pepper, and Jupiter would look like a giant beach ball next to that speck of pepper. But that Pluto energy is, don't be tricked or deceived by its size. It's got a lot of power. It's the soul. And truth will be revealed about that. And right after that, the very next day, and I think helping this momentum of higher consciousness, truth reveal, up leveling, if you will, to our species' next available level, like you're hoping for, is Mars going direct. And that is a big deal. It's been retrograde for 6 months, which is also a big deal. And it's been in its own home sign of Aries, which has really added to the flavor of this energy. And that Mars direct is going to feel like an impulse shot, like a kaboom a little bit, because it's been waiting to be going direct. And so Jupiter and Pluto conjunct, Mars direct, all November 12th and 13th are the kind of concluding piece to the report this time that will take us into the Scorpio new moon, which is the total darkness. It is the Scorpio on top of new moon is a dark, there's no light. And then Scorpio energy, the underworld of the planets. And it's the kickoff of Diwali, which is high holiday in India, which celebrates overcoming the darkness to the light, that we remember who we are. And it's not necessarily that the darkness is a bad thing. It's that we find the light of our hearts in the midst of all of that meditation, all of that seeking, all of that soul searching. We remember who we are, and that's what we celebrate at that time. So don't be afraid of the dark. In there is the light, and it will be revealed shortly. Who knows how shortly, but it's not forever longer. And there's much goodness in the darkness. The imagination is vivid. Keep it to the positive, though. Sometimes we let our dark imagining spiral us down into the abyss. Stay in hope and stay in truth at this time. Truth of your own heart center. Remember, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. So much of it is trusting yourself.
And Diwali is one of my favorite ones. I don't know why. I remember back when we were first dating, putting candles outside of the Karma Yoga Center.
Yeah, quick story about that. And Joe, if you're out there, you were present. So this was at our old Karma, and you guys can tune out if you don't want to hear the rest of this story. It's not that great, but Joe and Michael bought some fireworks.
Oh.
Yeah, some fireworks. Not little sparklers, but fireworks that shoot out of rockets. And they had no idea what they were doing with them. And we were setting up our little mandalas on the sidewalk with tea lights and spices, and they were so beautiful. And these two decided to really put some light into the sky, although they didn't aim to the sky. They lit it sideways, and it went shooting down the middle of the street and narrowly missed Joe.
Yes,
Michael
both.
was, it was crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dating a teenager, is what it felt like at the time. Just a little side story.
Stick with the tea candles for Diwali.
Yeah, no rocket fireworks by any means, especially if you're not real sure how to set them off.
Indeed. Good.
And I'm pretty sure they were illegal in city ordinance. Pretty
Likely
sure.
so.
Yeah.
Happy Diwali, everybody.
Don't be afraid of the dark, but do be afraid of fireworks.
Namaste.
We'll see.